everyone. This is Daphne Vantine speaking from HelloTeam. Thank you so much for tuning in today for this webinar on improving culture with engagement and recognition. This is going to be one of the most attended webinars we've ever had, and we're so excited that you guys could all join. Something I will point out, we are going to be accepting questions. Hopefully we can weave those into our presentation. If not, we can address them at the end. If we do run out of time, please continue submitting questions. We are so excited to hear from you and gain your feedback, and we will be getting back to you with answers to all those questions. So to kick us off, I'm going to introduce not only myself, but my other panelists with me today, Peter Padovano. For me first, my name is Daphne, and I am a business development representative here at HelloTeam, and I'm also joined by our Chief Revenue Officer, Peter Padovano. So I will let Peter introduce himself.
Thank you, Daphne. Again, my name is Peter, and I appreciate Daphne coordinating and putting this together. I'd like to recognize her for that in terms of putting this webinar together. As Daphne mentioned, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at HelloTeam. Basically, my background is I'm an employment attorney. I've been in the HR space working for startups as well as companies that have gone to IPO. And I've seen a lot of companies have challenges when it comes to properly recognizing folks for their accomplishments and accolades, and also giving the proper recognition as well. Coaching HR folks in terms of what's appropriate and what's not when it comes to recognizing milestones of individuals as well as company milestones. So to set the agenda appropriately, we're going to be reviewing the following topics. Number one, section one is going to be about the breakdown of silos and celebrating accomplishments together. Two, tying recognitions to rewards and bonuses. And then three, recognizing teams and individuals for exceptional work and exploring how HelloTeam has comprised various best practices that we've incorporated in terms of our HRS platform that has helped companies grow in revenues by up to 25%, but more importantly, retaining the most important aspect of their business, their employees who are engaged even more at the workforce because of the skill sets that we teach our clients. And at the very end, for the very best questions, and I know Daphne's smiling, we'll be providing an Amazon gift card because we appreciate your feedback and your questions so that we can improve the clients that we service.
Sounds great. Thanks, Peter. So like you mentioned, we're going to be diving into some really important topics around recognition, around engagement. And this first one we're going to be talking about is breaking down silos and, in result, how we can celebrate accomplishments together when we do that. So breaking down silos, it's kind of a cliche and we've heard it all the time. But I think that's because it really is ever important in any organization. So I think when we think about, the most important piece to approaching this ever-present problem is about the alignment of individual goals. So that's where we really have to start. In order to be able to actually recognize people for the exceptional work that they're doing, first we have to know what work they're actually doing. We have to be aligned with their goals, understand what their responsibilities are. That's going to provide a foundation and a framework for us to then celebrate the accomplishments that they make, the milestones they reach, and of course the goals that they reach as well. So if we can align not only from an individual perspective, but cascade that throughout the organization. Something that I didn't mention before, which I think is super important, is I'm a millennial, and we have very different perspectives when it comes to being in the workforce. So as a new employee to the workforce, as a recent college grad, for me in particular, it's important for me as an individual employee to understand how my goals connect to my team, connect to our department, in other scenarios, how you might connect to your division, your region, and, in essence, to the entire organization. So really that's the first place to start. That 100% has to be in place. Otherwise, giving recognition is going to be quite difficult. Once we have that alignment and we're working towards that alignment, we're going to become more connected as individuals. We're going to be able to break down those silos, understand how business functions work together, how they support each other. We're then going to build a lot of appreciation and empathy So, for example, I am going to understand, and be able to celebrate the accomplishments of someone over in marketing, someone over in finance. That empathy is going to make us more connected, more aligned, more willing, and able to actually promote and encourage recognition. So Peter, I'd love to hear you chime in on this, because I know you have a long track record in sales and in people up. So what do you think about all this?
Well, I think you're right about that. And again, I appreciate you mentioning that you're a millennial, because I take it at a different point of view. Because I've been in the workforce for about 17 years now. I've kind of seen a lot of different ways that people recognize people, but I also realize too that sometimes people don't have the courage to recognize others. And sometimes you have one department pitting against another. I'll give you a great example. Having worked for multiple companies that have gone IPO, I've seen companies whereby service and sales, I don't know who's on the call, but I know sometimes service and sales or operations are not always in alignment. And because of that, they become, hateful or spiteful in regards to maybe someone achieving goals or hitting milestones. And in reality, that's why I think best practices when I've seen companies do is an all hands meeting, or properly having an HRIS platform that recognizes everything from that of one's birthday to that of just saying, hey, great job in terms of working with service or operations if you're in sales to make a smooth transition occur. So it's those little things in terms of connecting people to the objectives from a personal and from a corporate objective that adds value in terms of companies exceeding their goals as a unified engine. But again, I also believe in terms of proper appreciation. I always believe that I had one particular company that I just came from in my history was they always believed in always acknowledging their wins on a weekly basis. Now, in my opinion, that could go both as a positive and as a negative result, because sometimes there's not enough of a win that a company has achieved that week that might dilute the message to the entire organization. The real value is to figure out what's impactful to one's employees in terms of, hey, we achieved this milestone. Let's acknowledge it. Let's take a moment to acknowledge it, because we're all in a kind of a rat race in order to get to the revenues or go IPO, that we don't realize that we should enjoy the ride as we make those strides in terms of making a successful company.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I think an important thing, could be a great segue into our next point. Peter brings up this point about having proper and appropriate recognition. So, him just mentioning, the frequency and the amount of celebration we create around these wins, I think it's totally dependent upon the organization, but there are some key values and approaches that can be applicable anywhere. So when we're talking about proper and appropriate recognition, and this is one piece I think is a major takeaway that I obviously hope you guys take away from this presentation today. And what I mean by that is whenever a company is giving recognition, giving kudos, celebrating an accomplishment, that has to be tied properly and appropriately to the magnitude of that accomplishment. So for example, if we're celebrating someone's first 30 days on the job, or recognizing them for their first sale at the company, all the way till celebrating 25 years at an organization, we have to think about those different magnitudes, what those achievements and milestones mean, and assign the proper recognition as needed. So I know Peter and we were just, joking a few minutes ago about some bits of recognition he's received in the past. And I think it's really applicable. So Peter, would you share some of those examples, from your career? I think it would be helpful for the audience.
Well, as Daphne knows, I'm a big collector of watches, high-end watches that is, and I've achieved a lot of success in sales and leading sales teams. And so my old company provided me a watch that I had of my choice, a Rolex actually. And that meant something to me in terms of the proper recognition, because they knew what I had an interest in. And they understood that it aligned to saying to me, hey, I want to work even harder for this particular company. I'll give you another good example. Was in terms of work anniversaries. I had the fortune of working for one company for 8.5 years. And they were actually an HR company. And they gave accolades by giving kudos, by having the chief revenue officer of that particular company, including the CEO of a 5,000 person company, call me up and call up each individual employee when they hit their birthdays. Just making a call to their cell phone and saying, hey, Daphne, I want to wish you a happy birthday. I appreciate the job and the work that you're doing for me. Keep up the good work. And that meant something for the company before they went public, because it made them feel unified. And that's really the key in essence. A lot of companies fail in that. I know one question that came from the audience, because we did ask for several questions and several questions came in. One of the things is about, we hear constantly that morale is low. And the thing is, it's a question of figuring out why is that morale low, sending out surveys, finding out, getting a gauge of your employees. At my old firm, we used to do what's called skip reviews, whereby someone above your management would reach out to the employee beneath that you're managing to find out, how is the engagement going? Are you working collaboratively with your manager? Getting a pulse in terms of really what works and what doesn't work. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of that HelloTeam represents, because we're not only providing an HRS platform, but we're providing those best practices. And that's what we've learned just through industries that I've serviced, that my CEO has serviced. And the value to the folks that are on this call is really getting a better sense of what doesn't work and getting the proper coaching, so that this way they cannot make the same mistakes that other organizations we've seen have done.
Yeah, and I love the point you make about the watch. It's kind of funny, and this brings in the different perspectives that Peter and I have, given, our time in the workforce. Personally, if I'll be honest, a nice watch isn't something that I would like. So I think you have to think about the audience that you're, recognizing. How is your workforce comprised? Is a nice watch or is a call from the CEO, is that going to make sense for your organization? So I think you have to think a lot about the demographics that you have, the age groups. Are they millennials? Are you leaning more on, Generation Y or baby boomers? And how are they going to perceive different bits of recognition? So I think it's another thing to say is it's not safe to assume what recognition is going to be impactful and what's going to be beneficial or not. And so I guess the simplest thing we can say is simply ask your employees. Say, for certain milestones, what would you consider proper recognition?
So if you don't mind me asking, Daphne, you're a millennial. I know we have some folks that are millennials on this call.
Yeah.
What would you consider proper recognition from a millennial point of view?
Yeah, so, I think the first thing that comes to mind when we think about millennials and the issue facing our generation, especially with college graduates, the student loan debt, I read a stat recently that it's approaching $1.5 trillion, and only 4% of companies are actually supporting people and giving some assistance. So, right off the bat, that's something that I would think about when we think about these different demographics is what's important for that generation. And, would a watch or a new car or whatever, would that really be impactful? Maybe taking that money and saying, we're going to help you on your student loans, or we're going to support you in your professional development. So I think it's really important, like Peter mentioned, being proper and appropriate with how we're doing this and being really thoughtful, I think, in the end. And then something I also want to point out with tying recognition to rewards and bonuses are, when we can track and we can measure this, it's going to be much more powerful. When we can quantify recognition, we understand who is receiving it, who is giving it, in what quantities, in what locations, teams, etc. When we can drill down and actually have quantifiable data around these topics, we can start to identify those top performers. We can identify those future leaders as well. So when we think about, future leaders in particular, I think a big, and Peter, I hope you agree with this, a big leadership principle is being able to give recognition where it's due, not taking full ownership of a big win, especially when it was a team win. So I think when we can quantify and track recognition being given out, we see who's giving it. We know to keep an eye on those people when we're thinking about internal promotions, when we're thinking about, the future leadership of our company.
Yeah, and it ties into the other question that I've seen from the audience too, that we received in advance in terms of, what are the latest trends in terms of employee recognition, or even in terms of how often do you recognize? Is it once a year? Is it quarterly? Is it, it really all comes down to the culture that you're trying to build. And again, we have best practices that we can relay after this call in terms of what we've seen as trends in terms of the proper employee recognition. But I think it really all stems to creating a survey for the population, knowing your audience in terms of the demographics of your groups, and then more importantly, making sure that the recognition you apply is impactful. That's what it really comes down to, because you want to know that when is the right time to give that proper recognition.
Right, absolutely. And I think it really should be a collaborative process. So this is something that should be constantly iterated upon, gaining feedback from your employees, not only what recognition would be impactful for them, but that might change over time as the world changes. That recognition and what's considered beneficial could definitely change over time.
So again, we've discussed a little bit in terms of recognizing teams and individuals for exceptional work. We gave a little overview, and I know we gave a little bit of that response in the other slide. But in regards to outcomes, the goal here is, and these are things that we've done in terms of research, if you're able to have a culture that embraces one another, you're going to have lower turnover. You're going to increase revenues. As I mentioned before, HelloTeam's helped companies increase revenues by that 25%, just because we've been able to give simple best practices. That's kind of common sense, but sometimes people don't realize that it's easy to manage people as long as you align the personal goals to the corporate objectives. And then also at the same time, organizations that are achieving those results are reducing their turnover by 13%. This is coming from stats from Watson Wyatt. But again, it's aligning the proper recognition to one's employees so that this way you keep the engagements up. And then finally, look, the U.S. Department of Labor can't be so wrong in regards that the number one reason why people leave is that you're not getting that pulse. You're not getting that check to see if employees don't feel appreciated. And again, that's what I'm saying. I worked, very hard for one particular company that went public, because having a CEO call me up when I'm running sales and saying, hey, I just want to wish you a happy birthday. Hope you have a great birthday with you and your family. How's your son doing? That meant more to me than any pay that I can receive in terms of benefits. Hopefully my CEO is not hearing that today, but hopefully she is as well.
Yeah, and I think, in addition, these are just the things that have been researched, measured, and tracked. I think there are also a ton of a myriad of other emotional stress that can come from, not having employee recognition. When we think about turnover, we think about losing top performers. Yeah. I'm sure, we have lots of HR leaders joining this session today, and I hope you're nodding your heads when you say that losing a top performer, having to do a layoff, a lot of big changes within our organization, it affects your way of life and your, mental health. So I think if we can start promoting this idea of having recognition being a foundational part, we're going to be able to slash a lot of these things you see on the screen, as well as just, improve our quality of lives at work. So that kind of brings us to a part of the presentation that I wanted to dive into and just show you guys what it looks like within HelloTeam. Just want to give you a high-level overview of what that looks like and how you can kind of start to capitalize and take advantage of tools, at your fingertips. So within HelloTeam, you have access to a dashboard. You can celebrate accomplishments. Peter and I were talking about, the repercussions that occur when, an accomplishment simply goes unnoticed. So having a tool that can constantly update you on new employees, on birthdays, give you
on accolades too.
Yeah, on big wins and, big deals closed within a company. Those on top of work anniversaries and internal promotions. When you have this at your fingertips and you're able to quantify and track this, there's simply no way you can forget about it. So that's a great place to start.
And I'll give companies kudos that have an HRIS system already in place, or do the employee surveys to get a pulse of what their workforce is doing. But again, a lot of companies, even public companies today, have a hard time gauging the morale because they're not getting the best practices from their providers today. That's why HelloTeam came about, Daphne. Mm-hmm. And we realized our CEO was a successful CEO in the sense of exiting out another company. And really, the reason why she was able to successfully out of that company was that she had a unified team. Mm-hmm. And that's really the goal here, providing tools and best practices when it comes to unifying your team, the folks that are on this call, and providing things that could be impactful in terms of surveys or performance reviews or cascading goals, or as simple as saying, hey, we want to give you a high five in terms of recognition for a job well done. And I think also the thing that I didn't bring this up either, you don't only always have to give recognition for when you do a great job. You should also give recognition when it comes to facing adversities. Because I remember the biggest recognition I had in my career, Daphne, was when I did not close a deal and when I didn't hit my corporate objectives in terms of revenues. But you know what was my biggest takeaway from that? Was that my CEO and my leaders from the executive team called me up and said, you know what? The fact that you're working so hard, Peter, means more to us than anything else. You'll achieve the goals that you've envisioned for your personal goals because we believe in you. And sometimes that's more impactful in terms of growing the morale within a company and helping companies become real leaders in industries is because you have to face your failures and learn from your failures. And that's what HelloTeam will coach people as well because of the performance goals, because of cascading goals that are shown on this HRIS system. And I don't mean to digress, but I think it's real life examples that each of the participants on this call could take away and take a step back to apply those things they learn on their personal lives to their corporate well-being for the overall organization.
Absolutely. So another thing I want to point out is you have the ability within HelloTeam to see an extensive org chart that can be broken out. This is a great foundation for providing that recognition. Not only are you understanding and having alignment on goals, on teams, you can give recognition, right simply from the org chart or other places. We've developed this concept called, high fives. We've taken that into a system and automated that for you. That way, it is so simple and easy to give recognition at any point. It's as simple as going to your HelloTeam dashboard, clicking high five, sending that high five to an individual on your team, all of which gets pulled into this running news feed. Everyone in the organization knows about it. They can see it. We can celebrate these new accomplishments together in one succinct place. Now, high fives are something that we've developed and made possible for every employee within a company to give. Now, we've taken this, a step further, and we've talked about what are the bits of recognition that would be impactful for managers, executive leadership, and other administrators to give. So we've developed badges within the system that you can assign to a particular employee, to a group, to a team, when they've really gone above and beyond. So we provide a ton of different badges for you to choose from. They are customizable. They are very flexible. You populate them here. You can pull reports on who has received them, who is giving them, and so forth. So a really great way to take recognition a step further. Now, you're probably wondering, what does this all mean? What does this look like in the long run? And what it looks like is being able to actually collect all of this recognition on a profile. So if I'm going to go to Ryan, today's his birthday, so I can give him a happy birthday high five, and that's going to be displayed right on his profile as well as on the dashboard. So now Ryan has this running track record of high fives. He can display the badges that he has received. We can see more insight into those bits of recognition, what he has worked on, skills he'd like to have, and so forth. So really, HelloTeam gives you not only a basis for recognition and a tool for automating it, but many other tools that make people's success very simple.
And I think that ties into the morale as well, because I know one of the key questions is about morale. Morale is hard to judge sometimes, and that's why I always recommend those surveys. The surveys that we have on our systems, we have standardized questions, but we can customize the questions based on the needs of the chief people officer or the HR folks, or even the department heads for each department, because salespeople will have different accolades or goals than an engineering department. And we're able to figure out that because of our years of industry experience. And I think it's key, too, that we have millennials on our team, because I'm able to better understand what's important to Daphne, everything from coaching and advice in terms of career path, to that of, how does she achieve that from a personal objective, to that of, hey, I need to pay down my student loan. How do I achieve that? But that's the question that I ask everyone on this call. How do you align your corporate goals to the most important aspect of your business, your employees. And that's where I think we could help people tie that in.
Absolutely. And speaking of alignment, I think something is super impactful in this system is being able to see your team, seeing how your team is broken out, looking at past performance reviews, tracking current goals, and really staying on top of all of them. So you have instant visibility into your team. You can assign bits of recognition right from this view, super easy to share, and of course, celebrate accomplishments as we go. So that's really just a quick glimpse into what we can provide, how we can partner and help you guys. That is our end-all goal, to make your jobs easier, make your employees happier, and make your companies more successful in the long run. So if you have any questions about how we can supplement and help your current process, how we can customize and help you pick and choose which tools and features are important, please reach out and we'll be happy to chat with you. And other things I would point out around goals and performance, around surveys, around people analytics, there's really a lot we can go into, but I'm really glad you guys could all join. So I think at this point we have a few minutes left and we can address some questions that we received. Peter, if you wouldn't mind kind of pulling up the list that we have running.
Yeah, again, what I saw, the main question too is, can HelloTeam coach different types of departments? As I think I've already alluded to, we're able to sit down with any type of organization. It doesn't matter which vertical. A lot of times there are some common questions that correlate and transcend all different types of verticals, from technology companies to biotech companies to that of even engineering firms. A lot of times it's the same question in terms of how do I properly recognize people and how do I give that proper recognition? And again, that's where I think we can come in and give that proper guidance offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I always tell people this, it's a case-by-case study when it comes to giving the proper recognition and not one size fits all. And that's what we look forward to hearing more from the folks that are on this line, to answer privately the questions that they may have and understanding the dynamics of their organization, because our goal here at HelloTeam is really to achieve the goals of other companies. And if we can make an impact for one company in terms of their growth and make them the next Google or Facebook, we'll be glad to assist them in that venture together.
Absolutely. I think one of the questions we've actually seen in multiple different versions of this question, someone asked, where do I get started? And I think that's really important. So I'm sure there's people in the audience that maybe have full-blown recognition programs, are kind of curious about, the thought leadership in this space. Maybe they have, started something and they're kind of theorizing and gaining, in their discovery phase. Or maybe they don't know where to start. Maybe they don't have a lot of support. And they're really looking for something to kind of hit the ground running. So what would you say, Peter, for someone who kind of doesn't know where to start when it comes to recognition?
Well, again, it comes back to what you talk about in the second slide, I believe it was, or the third slide, that you got to figure out what's the proper recognition for the size of the company, and also where the life cycle of the company is. You're not going to be giving out a car or a gold watch to someone if you're only a startup. So it's a question of finding out what other companies are doing similar in your space, so that this way you can do the proper recognition. A lot of times, monetary reward or bonuses are not the only key item, but a pat on the back or just giving that high five that our system does allows employers to connect with their employees. But I always put together, and I always tell people, look, I'm Italian. I always believe in food, so hopefully people are chuckling on the phone. But having a lunch or just having a round table after hours and saying, hey, let's have some lunch for the team and just recognize that we're working hard collaboratively together means a lot. And invite other people. Sometimes departments separate themselves as silo, and that affects morale. That's a big challenge for a lot of companies. Invite people that you maybe feel awkward around. Invite them to get to know them on a personal note.
Absolutely. So looks like we have about just 1 minute left. Want to be able to give you guys a chance to get some more questions into the Q&A. We've already received a lot, especially ahead of time. What I will point out is that, like I mentioned before, we will be doing this raffle based on questions that we receive in the Q&A. So every question that's asked in the Q&A or via email, we will be entering those into a raffle.
Yep.
We're raffling off 2 Amazon gift cards, each valued at $25. So there's no limit on the questions you can ask. Probably keep it to the topics that we've discussed today. But really, this is our way of showing appreciation for you guys joining the webinar, supporting us, and also just letting us engage in this really interesting conversation. So we'll leave the chat open for a few more minutes. So get all your questions in. We will get answers out to you and also alert the winners of our raffle. So any final words, Peter? No,
I just want to give you a high five in recognition for the hard work done. And I just gave Daphne a high five, and I plan to take you out for lunch later on next week. So I really appreciate the time the audience has given us, and I hope that we can make an impact for each of the prospects or folks that are on this line that we might be able to help here at HelloTeam.
Absolutely. So be sure to write in the chat, and if anything strikes you later on today or over the next few days, reach out to us at team@helloteam.com. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.